Hello, welcome. This is Shannon Eastman. I'm the host of the Work That Matters podcast. These are conversations that take place at the intersection of personal growth and business growth. There's going to be a shift in these conversations as we go forward. We're containing them to about 30 minutes and we're exploring one idea at a time. This particular conversation with Dr. Jim Bradley from the west of Ireland, nonetheless, I was in Dublin having that conversation with him. He is joining me to talk about resilience and falling down 7 times, getting up 8. And he does know a lot about that. He suffered a stroke in 2016 and worked on his recovery so that he could gain his 5th Dan black belt in Shotokan karate. That was in 2019. So just before the world took a turn to the left. This is an interesting conversation that I'm not going to explore too much on this side. The title speaks for itself. Dr. Jim Bradley is a coach, consultant, advisor. He works with individuals on getting out of their way. He specializes in resilience and living your optimal life, regardless of what is showing up for you. He's got some very interesting insights on resilience, getting back up, and staying the path. He has written Rise Up. It's a 6-step guide for personal change. He's developed frameworks, and he's got another beautiful piece called Striking Back at Stroke, using karate in recovery. Without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to this conversation, and it is my intention that it shifts your perspective on what's possible for you right now, particularly February 2021. I'm definitely ready. Dr. Jim Bradley, it is great to have you on this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for the invite, and I'm looking forward to talking to you and the people who listen to your podcast.
And you're over in the west part of Ireland, are you not?
I am indeed. I live in Ennis in County Clare, near the Atlantic. I'm from Northern Ireland. That's why I talk with this particular accent. But I'm a displaced Northerner living in the west coast of Ireland. Displaced, yes.
And I'm about 3.5 hours to the right of you over in Dublin.
Yes.
3.5 hours on a good day.
On a good day, yeah, exactly.
Day. Over in Dublin. What's the date? Is it the 19th of February, 2021?
Today is the 18th of February, isn't it?
Facing 12 months, or we're going into our 12th month of COVID-19. And we're chatting today about this idea of a Chinese proverb, actually, fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Mm-hmm.
And you took a really hard fall in 2015 when you got your stroke. And the world is taking a really hard fall right now inside this pandemic. And I wanted to explore the idea with you of fall down 7 times, get up 8. It has this really lovely entrepreneurial, positive thinking. I get knocked down, but I get up again. I'm sure there's
exactly. Yeah.
So how do we do it when we're in the depths of our fall? And take us back to 2015, and then let's bring it back into this pandemic.
Yeah, it was actually 2016 that I had my stroke. So it's 5 years ago. It was a minor stroke. Went to bed perfectly normal the night before. Woke up the next morning. My leg and my arm weren't working very well, but I thought had just gone to sleep, that I'd lain funny on it during the night. So I went on to work, drove into work. I was doing examinations in UL at the time. First student came in, and I found I couldn't write. So I was scrolling on the page like a 2-year-old.
Wow.
That was when I realized something is wrong. So I phoned my friend who's a GP and organized to go in to see him when I was finished work, because the fact it was exams, I didn't want to inconvenience students. So
could wait.
Well, I didn't. I think at that point I didn't realize it was a stroke. There was probably a bit of denial going on as well, because I knew that my face wasn't looking funny, or at least not any funnier than usual. And it was just that my leg was really heavy and my arm wouldn't work very well. So went to my friend, the GP, and ended up being taken up to Galway Clinic.
Wow.
And it was in Galway Clinic that after the tests, the scans, etc., that the consultant there confirmed that I had had a minor stroke. And it was, yeah, falling down is one thing, but it was almost like falling into something, or falling into nothing is how I'd describe it. And what I remember most about the few minutes after getting the diagnosis was complete silence in my head. There was no noise. And my head's usually, I suppose, a bit like yours. It's full of ideas and thoughts, and you're always thinking about stuff. But when I was told what had happened to me, absolute silence. And it was within that silence that I realized that the only person who could actually help me was me.
Yeah.
You know, that, yeah, the doctors were going to help and my family would help and so on. But really, when you boil it down, the only person who could really make a difference was myself. And
so you're fallen into the darkness, into nothing.
yeah, yes.
You realize in that moment that the only person who can help you is the person who's at the bottom of the well on their knees.
Yes.
How does one get up the 8th, 9th, 127th time?
Well, that description you've made there about being the only person in the bottom of the well, that's a really good description. But at least if you're the only person there, you know exactly what you have. It really strips away all the externals, because if you're the only person in that position, then you're the only person really who can influence it. And, you know, at the top of every well, you've got an opening that there's light coming in.
Yeah.
And I suppose my first thing was to say, okay, what am I going to do to get out of this? So I did sort of make the decision, I'm going to get out of it. And then I started to make the plan, what am I going to do? And the first thing that I suppose that I made the decision around was the language I was going to use. You know, I think today you have a lot of talk of people being survivors and victims and this, that, and the other. For me, I felt that if I carry this as something I've survived or something that I'm a victim of, then I'm giving power to what has happened to me. And it's like putting a big heavy weight in a rucksack and carrying it around with you. So the language was one thing. I decided, okay, I am not going to use that terminology. I had the stroke. I'm moving ahead now. What am I going to do? And I began to set a plan in place then for moving out of it.
There's an idea, or being very deliberate with your language, I think, is critical for sure. And there's also this school of thought that wants to celebrate survivors, celebrate the stories, the Hollywood dramatic stories that we've lived through. And there's this one side, which is, you know, deeply respecting and honoring the struggle. Yes. And then there's the other side, which is deeply recognizing it as a schooling or a life lesson that we transition through.
Yeah, we move through, exactly.
Making it the thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth just unpacking a little bit, you know, why is the language that you chose so important? And it goes back to, you know, where your mind, where focus goes, energy flows, and all that type of stuff. You're either focused on the bottom of the well, or you're bringing your attention and focus to the light, flickering through those dark leaves and branches.
Yeah.
But talk to it, like, why did you know in that moment that the language you chose would be so important?
Over the years, I've always had a big interest. I'm a scientist by training. I have a Ph.D. in immunobiology, and I am a martial artist as well. So I've always had a big interest in terms of the potential that we have with regard to becoming better or growing or getting ourselves out of problems that we put ourselves into, or oftentimes problems that we get dropped into, like this one that I had. And I had always read that, you know, language dictates behavior in a lot of cases. How we utilize the language, how we filter it and attribute meaning to it, has a huge impact in terms of the behavior we exhibit, and that behavior then links into the results that we can expect to see. And I felt that, you know, if I could have forward-facing language, potential-based language,
bingo, yes,
that I would be able to to move ahead. Now, I didn't know how far I would go, but I knew that I would get as far as I was absolutely able. And the thing about motion was really important because it was my leg. I walked a Quasimodo. So, I was kind of trailed along behind me. So the first thing they did in the hospital was they said, we'll put you in a wheelchair. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not able to walk very well, but I can walk.
Yeah.
And this linked back to a book I'd read a few years ago about brain plasticity.
Yeah.
And the guy had, brains can heal themselves, but they'll only heal themselves if you keep using what you've lost, or trying to use what you lost. You're establishing these other neural pathways. So the first night I was in hospital, I walked up and down the corridor. I just was not saying, I'm not going to lie down to this. I'm going to keep moving towards what I want. And I think in a lot of cases, like if you look at the old way of treating conditions like heart attack and stroke, it was lie down and rest and relax and don't move. Basically, you give yourself permission there to stop,
To give up.
to stop functioning.
Yeah.
And I did not want to give myself permission to stop in that respect. I wanted to give myself permission to move forward.
Important insight. I'm not going to say mindset, but it is a really important insight. And I want to pivot over to the falling down 7 times that the world is experiencing right now. And I want to focus on small business because we all know that small businesses are in their own
Absolutely
dark pit. They're on their knees right now.
Yes.
I fell to my knees 2 weeks ago when my office notified me that it was kind of like the end of it now. It kind of hit me between the eyes. I kind of delayed my COVID response because the first year I was innovate, adapt, outrun it, keep focused on whatever's ahead of me until I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so as we relate the dark well to the small businesses today, February 19th, 2021, I really like that idea of choosing the language and this forward focus that you're talking about. How would you relate that to a small business owner listening right now?
I think at the minute, there's so much information going around, some of which is accurate, some of which isn't accurate. But there's this
about what?
About COVID, about business, about calling this thing the new normal, which it absolutely is not. It's not normal. So I think we need to move away from that language, because I think once we start to call it the new normal, that's almost given an acceptance to what is happening to us. So language again there is important. But I think for a small business, in a lot of cases, they're so blinded by this information overload that they're constantly trying to process. And when I talk to businesses, I say the first thing you need to do is actually to stop. Stop and then think about, where exactly am I? And what resources do I have personally that I can utilize to move on? Whether that's a relationship or knowledge that I have or a network that I'm part of, what can I use to try and move myself forward?
That's
and not be depending on other people to pull you forward or push you forward. You need to be able to do this yourself.
That was something you said in an earlier conversation. Choose focusing on things that you can control.
Yes.
And eliminating the need to control those things that are beyond your abilities.
Yes.
In a very practical sense, what does that look like for you?
For me, in my business, it means looking at who can I help? Who's out there at the minute that I can give assistance to that may never have been on my radar before. How can I improve what I offer to them? How can I make sure that they know that I exist? And how can I make sure that when they deal with me, that I'm giving them practical advice to allow them to move forward? That it's, the time for exquisite theory is not now. The time now is, what do we do? What have we got that we can utilize to drive ourselves forward? And the key word there is for us to drive ourselves forward. I think in some cases you've got people and they've got almost like a dependency mindset. We'll wait for this to happen before we do such and such, or we need X to agree before we can move forward. In a lot of cases, these are constraints we place upon ourselves without any real evidence. And in fact, they debilitate us from taking actions that we have power over, things that we can do ourselves.
I ran so I've spent the first 2020, I haven't watched news since March last year, 2020. I've been very vigilant about protecting my focus.
Yeah.
For the most part. I'm reminding myself in the summer of last year when I did start wading in on the COVID conversation, and I withdrew within weeks because I was aware that my focus was starting to split and it wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
I spent 2020 as vigilant as I could with a few blips, protecting my focus.
Yeah.
Adapt, innovate. Destruction is the impetus of creation. Crisis is birth. And I would play these over and over, and I would just focus and go. And then in the last 4 to 6 weeks, I noticed a very subtle shift into my audience, which are very professional, very financial services, small businesses, starting to be interested in a lot of my passion project, which is personal growth. It's a very interesting laboratory exercise for me.
Right.
So 2 or 3 weeks ago, I thought I'll throw out 5 clinics, 90 minutes in length. 4 of them will be on the teach a brand to fish, business as usual, growth, sales funnels, marketing, blah. And 1 of them will be on personal growth. And my audience is professional, entrepreneurs, small businesses, but advisors, trainers, consultants who typically sell to the financial services industry. And I had, I think, 26 buy into the personal growth. Tickets were 50 quid, 90 minutes and 30-minute Q&A. And then the other 4, which were the business as usual stuff that I've been doing for the last 100 years, were 3 and 5 people subscribing. And 2 of them were my friends.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's go with 2 people. And it's taken me 2 weeks to adjust to this. And it's made me go out and talk to a number of small businesses to just get a temperature check. And the feedback that I've been receiving over the last 2 weeks is this: growth is not my focus right now. Stability and security is.
Yeah.
And the fear and the anxiety that I'm experiencing times 17 different business owners, has got my priority shifted. I can't even focus on looking at how to adjust my sales funnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
because that's quite a big thing to do. I think if you're looking at change, you've got the different types. You've got the transformational or big bang change where we're saying we're going to up our game completely and move into a different sector. And we're going to do this, that, and the other. Quite a big jump. And if you miss, what a waste of energy and what a level of demotivation. And there's not the room for that at the minute. But the type of change that I would teach would be more incremental. Okay, what's our first step? So for me, for instance, my first step was when I got out of hospital to walk to the bottom of the road I live on, 700 meters.
Yeah.
And I walked that and I said, okay, I've achieved that. Let's consolidate. Let's do it for a couple of days. And then what I'll do is I'll try and walk 1.5 kilometers. And that was my next step. So every time you get to a step point, consolidate and then say, okay, what's my next step from here? Move there, consolidate. And eventually by taking these, what might seem very, very small steps, you get to where you want to be. But the key thing is all the time you're moving forward and you're getting rapid feedback. Yeah, what I'm doing is correct. No, this is right. I've consolidated here. What do I do next? And using our own personal resources to drive us to that next level. And it's not that somebody say, oh my God, your business has transformed overnight. That is not the point. At the minute, our point is, can we get through this absolute disaster zone we're in at the minute? How do we survive? How do we get ready for coming back out of it? What do we need to be doing at the minute to allow us to have some level of satisfaction in terms of what we're doing, so that, if we decide we're going to change our sales funnels, whatnot, and it's going to take 6 months for that result, to impact on us, that's the wrong thing for us to do at the minute, I think.
Yeah.
We should say, okay, what can I do that's going to give me feedback to show this is the right path, so that whenever we keep on doing it, we're going to eventually get to a level that gives us what we actually want from our business. You know, and it's about this sort of, okay, it might be sort of old hat, the stepwise approach, but so many people that I speak to have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
They're all about transformation. They're all about this big bang moment moving ahead. At the minute, there are no big bangs.
Small.
Not that I can see anyway. I think it's really small but secure and consolidatory is what we're looking at.
It's like slow is the new fast. There's visual, a very popular meme going around, which is a cartoon of two ladders up against a brick wall, and there's a chap at the bottom of ladder 1 and a chap at the bottom of ladder 2. Ladder 1 has rungs every 6 to 12 inches. Ladder 2 has rungs every 3 feet.
Yeah.
And the visual is to kind of drive home the idea that, you know, the slow and steady, secure steps on the ladder get you to the top or get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's easier than having to like run gauntlets to.
But another thing here as well that we have to realize when we're doing this personally is the ladder against the right wall? That's a critical question to ask, because, you know, if we're consolidating and moving forward to a future or a preferred future that, you know, we don't actually want, then that ladder's against the wrong wall.
I think I would even roll it back and say there's a question to be had, which is, where am I right now in this pandemic shenanigan?
Yeah.
Transition would be the word that I'm using for this year. 2 weeks ago when I got the feedback about the office and I was looking at the not zero interest, but zero interest in my teach a brand to fish as usual business.
Yeah.
I had this moment of, holy shit, like the world that I've known and operated in for the last 100 years, like that is 25 to 30% of it needs to shift now. And like, who am I in this moment? What is my ground zero? What can I take stock of? What am I missing that I need to now go and access? And I have a Bruce Lee book. I made it. It has all the famous quotes and pictures and stories of his life that I use to remind myself in times of WTF.
Yeah.
And I opened this book to Bruce's famous quote, which is, "To hell with circumstance. I create opportunities." And I just sat with that in that moment. And I thought, I don't need to have the answers today or next week. What I could create for myself right now is time and space to transition slowly hustle, gentle care, still moving forward, like you say, but not necessarily at the speed that I would have done.
Yeah. Like I think keeping on the martial sort of line with Bruce Lee, I studied karate. I'm a 5th Dan black belt in Shotokan. And one of the two concepts that we would have, one would be waza, which is an awareness of what's going on around you. Yeah. And I think up until quite recently, our awareness of what was going on around us was relatively limited because we were so busy doing stuff.
Yeah.
I think now with sort of this, we'll call it the Great Reset, which some people are calling this, it's given us a chance to become much more self-aware of what we have and where we should be using it. And that then allows us to bring in a second martial concept in karate, which is called kime. And kime is about the focus point. Where is the focus point for our energy? So if you're hitting someone, you want the focal point to be in your 2 knuckles that make contact with whatever part of their body you're happening to hit. But for us, I think we need to look at where is the kime point for our knowledge, for our networks, for our business, so that we can maximize the impact of what we're doing. So when we do take these small steps, we're aware of what's going on around us, and we're also aware of the impact that these small steps are having. And I think at this time, an awareness of the effect they're having on us is really important, so that there's a wee bit of motivation coming in there, a wee small bit of satisfaction starts to creep back into our work.
Happens.
And indeed, this whole positivity allows us not to be happy clappy, but to realize, you know what, this is the right path. We're moving the right way. And it's really important. I think it's really important at the minute to be able to do that, not to abdicate our own responsibility for ourselves. Practically every business, if you look at how it runs, there's nearly always something we can do as a business owner to move ourselves forward.
Absolutely, there is.
You know, and I think at this point in time, you know, what you're saying there about your workshops, I've found the same. People don't want to be doing the big, massive project management workshops or technical writing or communication skills. They're looking at workshops. How can I be better? What about me? You know, and I'd say if you took a poll of the podcasts people are listening to, they would be all things like, you know, Elizabeth Day's How to Fail, How to Get Better, or Farron Cotton's Happy Place. They're these, as I say, they're not happy clappy, but they're ones that can challenge you to think about how you see yourself and how you see where you are, and also how you see what you can actually do to get to this, what I'll call preferred future. And it's managing this change process is really, really important at the minute, I think.
Oh, yeah. For me, it's about bringing in, we can call it positivity or benefits, but bringing in the support and the benefits to the same degree as the challenge that we're experiencing and maybe buckling to. But it can't just be challenge. We need to create the space for the benefit to come in, because it's in that intersection that we can get up off our knees and go, right, let me clear my head for a day, walk in the forest, and tomorrow morning over a coffee, I'm going to write down 5 things that I can do, and then I'm going to pick one.
Yeah. And in some cases, the first thing you need to do is to ground yourself.
I would say that is,
you know, you need to be absent. And again, going back to when I was sick, when I got home from the hospital, I went out into my garden, took off my shoes and socks, and stood in the grass.
Yeah.
Just to center and ground myself. And that sounds very hippie, you know, but I felt, unless I know where I am now, how the hell am I going to know where I'm going to get to?
Yeah. I have a thing that I do with people interested in my passion project, the personal growth stuff, called Soaking Your Senses. And it's based on Bruce Lipton's work. Your 5 senses take in information that is received by your central nervous system, and your central nervous system then instructs 50 trillion cells in your body to act accordingly. And if the material that your 5 senses are taking in are giving you states of anxiety or fear, then your body's going to act accordingly, chemical,
absolutely, yeah,
etc. So for the last year in 2020, knowing as much as I know about sensory experience, I burn essential oil 24/7. I listen to Emiliano Toso. He's a cellular biologist who uses music to heal in medical institutions and hospitals. So I'm always listening to deliberate material that will calm me.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to a client or your fine self, I've got ginger and turmeric. And I have a light show that I invested in because I thought, fuck it. It's COVID-19 and I could use some extra cosmos in my life. So I got this thing off Amazon for €69. And when I turn it on, it's the solar system, the Milky Way.
Okay, cool.
So I deliberately soak my senses, because I know that calm and zen and grounded is like, it's 80% that and 20% strategy and tactics.
Yeah. Because, you know, if we're taking in lots of stuff into our system in terms of news feeds or Facebook or whatever, it does influence us. It does have a big impact in terms of how we think. And it tends to, in some cases, maybe even denature what our own thought processes are.
Yes.
You know, it bends them so, it's a bit like an enzyme. Once it gets bent out of shape or denatured, it can't work anymore. It can't catalyze the process that it's involved in. And I think a lot of our heads are like denatured. A lot of our brains are like in this denatured state, because what we're actually allowing to get into it is causing us to have the wrong thoughts, causing us to maybe abdicate responsibility, causing us perhaps to actually ignore things that we should actually be grasping and nurturing and enjoying. That absolutely lie within our control. It costs zero to go out on a really lovely night and stand and look at the stars. Zero cost.
I don't think people fully
massive impact.
I don't think people fully appreciate the power, the impact, the necessity of things like meditation. They don't, even in the corporate space, well-being and mindfulness, I think they call it. They don't fully appreciate its power, and therefore they dismiss it. Someone said the most dangerous words in the English language is, yeah, I know that already. No, you don't. If you're not doing it, you don't get it. Like, you don't get it.
I would look at karate as moving meditation. Especially the kata, where you're going through the set of movements. The only person involved is yourself. You have full control over what you're doing. You have the full sensation in terms of how you feel. You're in tune. And that's really important. I think for any business owner who's not in tune with himself or herself, they're missing a huge opportunity.
They're crippled. It is 80% you and 20% strategy and tactics.
Absolutely.
When you're a business owner, personal growth is business growth. We're almost at the time, but I wanted to just do a wrap up. If you were reflecting on this conversation we just had, so we started by talking about your experience in 2016. Apologies that I said 15.
That's okay.
And I forgot we're in 2021.
No problem.
So, and we talked about, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Then we talked about dropping into the dark bottom, very deep well.
Yes.
And then you talked about, choosing your language to describe, and then choosing your focal point. Take me through this conversation and just give me like the 3 takeaways, the 3 summaries that you want to leave the person listening to this with.
Okay. First one I would say is we've talked about moving ahead, but I think the first thing we have to do is we have to give ourselves permission. And again, because we look for maybe so much external validation in terms of what we do, we lose sight of the power of giving ourselves permission. I had to give myself permission to basically regress, accept where I was, and then develop a plan to move forward. So giving yourself permission is one thing. Another thing that I mentioned in my book is using what I would call positive procrastination. There are things that we really want to do, but we can't do it now. Doesn't mean we're never going to do it, but I think if we keep carrying it around with us, it just anchors us in a very dark place. I knew that I wouldn't be able to write for a little while. So I made a plan. How am I going to learn how to do that? And I started to do I bought a book of simplex crosswords. I knew the words, but I couldn't write the letters in the boxes. It looked like some kid just scribbled all over the crossword. So again, it was being deliberate, giving yourself permission, and then being deliberate in terms of how you go about it. And the last thing I'd say is developing our awareness of what we can do. I think we're all able to do far more than we think. And one of the sort of key equations that you'd look at in coaching would be your performance in any aspect of life is equal to your potential minus what interferes with it. And I think as business owners, the identification of these interfering factors, whether they're, too much time on Facebook getting the wrong information, or listen to a news channel that's all doom and gloom, or trying to have this huge, big transformational jump. These are the 3 things I think that I would take away from the conversation. I don't know if you agree with that or not, because it's different being the expressor as opposed to the listener.
Permission to not be okay. Absolutely. Positive procrastination. Love that. And the awareness of what is going on inside our inner world. The Facebooks and the news and the drama and the action, the hype is not healing or helpful. It's
No.
creating more anxiety in your body. And whilst
Yeah.
you say, what was the word you used about the enzyme?
Denatured.
Denatured. I would take a less scientific expression and say, when you create that level of anxiety and fear in your body, you become dumb as shit. You could say denatured, but those hormones are flooding your executive center and you're not thinking clearly. So I love the wrap up. I loved having you and your story, and God bless you. You're doing amazing 5 years on.
Thank you.
5 years on. That is a credit to the work that you put in, and the dark nights of the soul that you no doubt went through to get here. So
I did. And part of the process as well was I wrote a book, and the book is on Amazon.
And the link below, you can grab the link below.
It should be in the link below, yeah. So again, some of my thoughts are presented in that in terms of how I managed to manage my change process, and if it helps anybody else, that's fantastic. But again, that was intentional. I decided, I've got this. How can I use this for my own benefit? If there's a benefit for somebody else, that is absolutely fantastic as well.
Bless you. Thank you. Great to have you.
Thanks very much, Shannon. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
The Work That Matters podcast, it's brought to you by ShannonEastman.com.